These are dark times, there is no denying. Our world has perhaps faced no greater threat than it does today. But I say this to our citizenry. We, ever your servants, will continue to defend your liberty and repel the forces that seek to take it from you.
You're listening to The Stephen Torriello Show, building a platform of liberty for people in search of truth with a dash of hope and a life worth living. The Stephen Torriello Show. And now, here's Stephen.
What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to the show. As always, thank you for tuning in. So, I think it's important that we get to the bottom of some of these narratives going into the 2024 election. One of the biggest narratives I think the Democrats are leaning on is Donald Trump is some threat to democracy. This is the only thing they have, folks, and this is the main thing that the leftist propaganda media is running on. Joe Biden's campaign, his entire campaign is going to be nothing but lies and to make Donald Trump be the boogeyman and to alienate half of America, in which he calls the MAGA extremists. So much for the great uniter. And for those of you listening that are conservatives or Trump voters, this stuff just blows your mind. I know, it does me too. And every time I listen to Joe and Mika, MSNBC, CNN, when I listen to the propaganda media, because I have to, I do it so you don't have to. We have to know what their strategy is. They're constantly telling you what they're thinking. They're constantly telling you what their plan is. And so you have to listen to these people so that you can see what the narrative is going to be. Situational understanding. This is something we talked about a few weeks ago. We have to know the situation that we're going in, and they can't run on Joe Biden's policies. They can't run on his ideas. They can't run on his record. And so, like I said, what they're going to do is they're going to run against Donald Trump. They're going to run on Donald Trump as the threat to democracy. And unfortunately, I know it's insane, but people fall for this stuff, man. They really do. I mean, I haven't heard one Democrat, not one Democrat on the campaign trail talk about what they voted for, the policies they've implemented, what their future goal is. Nothing. Everything is about Donald Trump and how the MAGA extremists are a threat to democracy. So, I think it's important that we go over some basic fundamental facts. And actually had artificial intelligence generate some definitions for me. All right? So, I asked artificial intelligence, ChatGPT, some of the basic questions. And the answer is going to shock you. So, I think it's important that we go through what is democracy. Because this is the funny part, folks. They tell you that Donald Trump is a threat to democracy, but they don't really fully understand why. They don't understand what a democracy is. If they did, then they wouldn't call this place a democracy. The United States of America is a constitutional republic. There's a lot of confusion between a democracy and a constitutional republic. And so here on this show, we're going to make sure that we understand exactly what is a democracy and what is a constitutional republic. And then we're going to go on from there. So, what is a democracy? So, a democracy is a form of government in which power is held by the people, either directly or through elected representatives. In a democracy, the key principles include majority rule, individual rights, free and fair elections, and the protection of minority opinions. This stuff I'm telling you is on point, folks. I could not have done a better job myself. And there's more. So citizens in a democratic society have the right to participate in the political process, influence government policies, and elect their leaders. Democratic governments are typically characterized by the rule of law, separation of powers, and a system of checks and balances to ensure that no single branch of government becomes too powerful. The fundamental goal of democracy is to provide a political system where individuals have a voice in the decisions that affect their lives and can hold their leaders accountable for their actions. Is that not breathtaking on how accurate that is? So, now we know what a democracy is. All right, and the keywords that popped out of me were free and fair elections and the protection of minority opinions. Those words stuck out to me, and this word stuck out to me. Influence government policies and system of checks and balances. There's a lot in this one little paragraph that ChatGPT generated. But I do have to say, it is on point. So that's what a democracy is. Now, what is a constitutional republic? Because that's what we are. We are a constitutional republic with democratic representation. So a constitutional republic is a form of government in which officials are elected by the people to represent their interests, and there is a constitution that limits the powers of government and outlines the rights of the citizens. This form of government combines elements of democracy with a framework of law that is designed to protect individual rights and limit the powers of government. So some key characteristics of a constitutional republic include representative democracy. Instead of direct democracy, where citizens vote on every single issue, a constitutional republic has elected representatives who make decisions on behalf of the people. Number 2, constitutional framework. There is a written constitution or set of laws that specifies the powers and duties of the government, the structure of the government, and the rights of citizens. This constitution is the supreme law of the land and cannot be easily changed or ignored by the government. That's a big one, very big one. Some keywords that stick out to me on this one is the supreme law of the land that cannot be ignored by the government. That sentence right there sticks out to me. And there's a reason why these sentences and these phrases are sticking out to me. There's a reason why these are popping off the paper. Is because what we're witnessing right now is exactly the opposite of what we're supposed to be witnessing. This is why I wanted to read this stuff to you, because I think it's important that you know the situation that we're in right now. All right, number 3, the rule of law. In a constitutional republic, everyone, including government officials, is subject to the law. The law is applied equally, and rights and procedures are established to protect individuals against arbitrary actions by the government. Well, we haven't seen any accountability from government officials, I would probably say, in the last 30 years. Number 4, checks and balances. The government is divided into different branches, typically executive, legislative, and judicial, each with specific powers and responsibilities. This separation of powers, along with a system of checks and balances, ensures that no single branch can gain total control. Number 5, protection of rights. The Constitution often includes a Bill of Rights or similar declaration that protects individual liberties and rights against government infringement, such as freedom of speech, religion, and the press. In summary, a constitutional republic is designed to be a democratic system where the will of the majority is respected while also protecting the rights of the minorities and individuals, all within a framework of law that limits the powers of the government. All right. And so I have to say, folks, ChatGPT, the AI that we are getting is absolutely incredible. I would say ChatGPT is probably 100 times better than Google. If you haven't used it yet, use it. It is you'll know why people are scared of this thing. But I have to say, so far, I haven't found anything wrong with ChatGPT as far as bias or anything like that. And so it's definitely on top of their game. And it's producing really good definitions here. So that is what a democracy and a constitutional republic is. All right. We know what both of those are. We went through what a democracy is. We went through what a constitutional republic is. And so I was curious. And so I asked ChatGPT, I said, why do Americans call their system of government a democracy when it's actually a constitutional republic? Because we know this is a very common thing. I'm even guilty of this too. I do this all the time, and in fact, you guys call me out on it quite often. I get your messages. I know that it's the constitutional republic. I think we fall... The leftist prop media is so good with the language. They own the language, folks. We say this all the time on the show. This is where the word assault rifle comes in. I never called AR-15s or AK-47s. I never called them assault rifles. I always called them either rifles or AR-15s. Never did I say assault rifle. But sometimes I catch myself saying assault rifle. And in fact, the leftist prop media has managed to define AR-15s as assault rifles. Did they not? I mean, think about it. Every time they say assault rifle, what's the first gun you think of? The AR-15. And that is exactly what they're trying to do. Listen, they're good. I know, it's quite shocking, isn't it? All right, so this is when I asked ChatGPT, why do Americans call their system of government a democracy when it's actually a constitutional republic? And here's the answer that it gave me. The terms democracy and republic often create confusion, but they are not, I repeat, they are not mutually exclusive and can describe different aspects of a country's political system. In the case of the United States, the government is both a republic and a form of democracy, which contributes to the common use of both terms. All right, number one, the United States is a republic because it is a country in which power resides in elected individuals representing the citizen body, and government leaders exercise power according to the rule of law under a constitution. In a republic, the head of state is not a monarch, and the people hold the power to elect their representatives. Number two, democracy. The term democracy is used to describe the U.S. system because the government is based on the principle of rule by the people, meaning that power is derived from the people and exercised either directly by them or by elected representatives. In the U.S., citizens have the right to vote and have a say in government decisions, which is a fundamental aspect of democracy. So there you go. That pretty much clears that up. So this is why there's a lot of confusion of, Democrats when they say, Donald Trump and MAGA voters are a threat to democracy. They don't actually know what a democracy is. So what they're actually saying is that Donald Trump and his voters are a threat to the Democratic Party, right? To their oligarchy. Donald Trump and the MAGA voters are a threat to their oligarchy. That is what they're trying to say. That if Donald Trump and the MAGA voters get elected, or if the MAGA voters elect Donald Trump, then Donald Trump is going to target the Democratic Party. And so that is what they mean when they say this. And so I think it's important that we drive this nail into this conversation, because it's important to call these people out when they say these vague phrases like Donald Trump and MAGA voters are a threat to democracy. Ask these people, well, what do you mean by that? What does that mean exactly? What are they a threat to? Donald Trump is a threat to the system that they built. This system that does not work for the people, but works strictly for the fourth branch of government, for this club that they've created in the last 40 years. That's what Donald Trump is a threat to. Unfortunately, that club is not working on behalf of the people. And so that is essentially their oligarchy. The Chuck Schumers, the Nancy Pelosi's, the Mitch McConnells, the Kevin McCarthy's, their oligarchy. Donald Trump is a threat to their oligarchy. The few powerful people at the top that rule everything. And ladies and gentlemen, that is not a democracy. That is an oligarchy. All right. So moving on here, the confusion arises because democracy is often used in a broad sense to refer to any system where the people have a significant amount of control over their government, typically through the right to vote for their leaders. So while the U.S. is technically a republic because it has a representative form of government, it is also a democracy because it is a system where the ultimate power rests with the people. Therefore, Americans often call their system of government a democracy to emphasize the democratic principle of popular sovereignty, even though from a technical standpoint, the U.S. is a federal constitutional republic. This highlights the democratic aspect of the American government, where citizens participate in the electoral process to choose their leaders and have a say in the governance of their country. So that is actually what a democracy is. Essentially, they're trying to say that Donald Trump is going to be what? A threat to sovereignty? I don't think so. If there's anybody that is America first, it's Donald Trump. When he talks about America, he talks about America as a whole and everybody in it. So if you notice this, when Donald Trump says we got to get these people out of here, he's talking about us as a country as a whole. I don't see why Democrats think Donald Trump is a threat to a democracy. What does that actually mean? They don't know. They just say these things because that is what the media is saying. And the media has owned the word democracy. They have been ramming it into the brains of the population for decades. And this is why. And so now we know what a democracy is, and we know what a constitutional republic is. And so this is the shocking part that I said was going to blow your mind. So you ask yourself the question, do you think this government is working on behalf of the people anymore? Do you think this government is doing what it's supposed to do? So when the American people, by a majority, say they don't want to send money to Ukraine, because that is the case, poll numbers have said that Americans, by a large majority, do not want to spend any more money in Ukraine. They don't want to be in war anymore. But yet, for some reason, our government is continuing to fund conflicts and is getting ready to send another $60 billion to Ukraine. So I would say that is a government that is no longer working on behalf of the people anymore, but instead working on behalf of itself. So I asked ChatGPT, when is a revolt necessary? All right? Listen to this. A revolt or revolution is generally considered necessary by some when a government severely fails to uphold its responsibilities, violates basic human rights, or ignores the will and welfare of its people. Historically, revolts have occurred when, number one, systemic oppression. There is prolonged and severe oppression where a government systematically denies basic rights and freedoms to its citizens. Number two, lack of representation. When people feel they lack any meaningful way to influence government policies or decisions, especially when peaceful and legal methods of change, like elections or legal challenges, are unavailable or ineffective. Number three, corruption and injustice. There is widespread corruption, lack of accountability, and a failure of the judicial system to provide justice, leading to a loss of public trust in government institutions. My. That, ladies and gentlemen, is quite shocking, isn't it? Yeah, I know. I was pretty shocked when I read this. Number four, severe economic hardship. Economic conditions deteriorate significantly, leading to widespread poverty, unemployment, and inequality, with the government failing to provide relief or improve conditions. Number five, violation of rights. There is a systemic violation of civil liberties, including freedom of speech, assembly, religion, or the right to a fair trial. Ladies and gentlemen, this is insane. So this is what artificial intelligence, this is what ChatGPT is saying a revolt is, and when a revolt is necessary. Revolt is often seen as a last resort, typically considered when peaceful means of achieving reform or redress have been exhausted or are seen as impossible. The justification for revolt is complex and subjective, heavily dependent on the specific context and conditions of a society faces. In democratic societies, legal and peaceful means of change are usually available and preferred, making the threshold for justified revolt significantly higher compared to authoritarian or dictatorial regimes where such mechanisms are often suppressed or non-existent. That is crazy, folks. So, ChatGPT, artificial intelligence, just described when a revolt is necessary. And I gotta say, there is at least 3, for sure, out of the 5 reasons why a society would revolt. Now, the first 2 that I don't really see is systemic oppression. I guess when I just don't see anybody being oppressed. Maybe they are. It really depends on what is systemic oppression. What is considered to be systemic oppression? And then number 2 is the lack of representation. The only problem I can see with number 2 is that if they're cheating in elections, which obviously the 2020 election was severely riddled with illegalities and in some cases straight up fraud. And so we are on the brink here, folks, of meeting the criteria of a necessary revolt in this society. I know it sounds crazy, and I'm probably going to get flagged for this episode, but I'm just telling you what AI has described. And I got to tell you, reading these 5 examples, it's quite shocking. Severe economic hardship, corruption and injustice, and violation of rights. What they're doing to Donald Trump right now, by persecuting him, by targeting him with lawfare, ladies and gentlemen, that's not just a violation of Donald Trump's rights. What pisses me off the most is it's a violation of our rights to vote for Donald Trump. If these people are using our justice system to try and kneecap Donald Trump in order to win an election, then folks, that is interfering in a federal election. That is violating people's voting rights. At least it's conspiring to. And so I don't know what else to say. I mean, I guess when we meet number 1 and 2, systemic oppression, but we are on the border of lack of representation, especially with all the shenanigans in the 2020 election. If this election turns out to be riddled with fraud and irregularities, then we got a problem. But I'm just reading you what ChatGPT said when a revolt is necessary. And so my last question to ChatGPT was, is this a non-biased description of when a revolt is necessary? And it responded with, yes, my description is intended to be non-biased, providing an objective overview of the conditions under which a revolt might be considered necessary based on historical precedents and political theory. I aim to present information that reflects a broad understanding of the topic without promoting any particular viewpoint or political ideology. When a government becomes the biggest threat to its own nation, it means that the actions or policies of the government are causing significant harm to the country's stability, safety, and the well-being of its citizens. This situation can manifest in various ways, such as authoritarianism. The government may suppress civil liberties, control or manipulate media, unjustly imprison or prosecute political opponents, and restrict freedom of speech, assembly, and association. Holy shnikes. This is crazy, folks. Number 2, corruption. Government officials might engage in corrupt practices, embezzling public funds, and prioritizing personal gain over public service, leading to economic inefficiency and loss of public trust. Number 3, human rights violations. The government could be involved in systemic human rights abuses, including torture, extrajudicial killings, and denying individuals their basic rights and freedoms. Hello, COVID, vaccine mandates, shutting down the churches, shutting down the schools. This is shocking, man. This is crazy. Number 4, economic mismanagement. Poor governance can lead to severe economic mismanagement, resulting in hyperinflation, high unemployment, and poverty, which significantly lowers the quality of life for the population. Number 5, internal conflict. The government might fuel internal conflict, such as promoting ethnic or sectarian violence, leading to civil war or mass unrest. In such cases, the government is no longer functioning as a protector and promoter of the common good, but rather as a source of oppression and instability. This can lead to increased calls for change, whether through reform, revolution, or international intervention to restore order, protect citizens, and ensure the nation's well-being. Ladies and gentlemen, did ChatGPT just tell us that a revolution is on the horizon? I think the revolution is here. I mean, when you go through these examples of when a revolt is necessary, the answers are shocking. And when you ask it if it's being biased, it's telling us that this is all based on historical precedents and political theory. This is, I gotta say, I am quite shocked. And so for the FBI, I know you guys are listening. I'm not promoting revolution. I'm not trying to incite violence or riots or anything like that. All I'm doing is I'm reading political theory and historical precedent that ChatGPT, artificial intelligence, gave me. I went through what a democracy is. I went through what a constitutional republic is. I asked it, when is a revolt necessary? These are the answers it gave me. The United States government is not working for the people anymore, folks. This thing has gotten way too big, way out of control. We have a Justice Department that is locking up political opponents for going and petitioning their government. We have dissidents being locked away in prison. We have the country's largest manhunt by the Department of Justice. Thousands of Americans are being targeted. You have Section 702 reform that's coming up to vote in the next coming days and weeks. The federal government and the intel agencies want to be able to continue spying on Americans with 702. Warrantless spying. And do I have to remind you that it was just last year that we found out that the FBI was caught mishandling the database 270,000 times. So in other words, they threw out this huge dragnet for foreign adversaries or foreign spies, whatever the case is, because that's what 702 is supposed to be for. The FISA is for foreign spying, not American spying. But we now know last year that over 270,000 times regular innocent Americans got caught in this database by the FBI. And they want to continue funding it. They don't want to change it at all, as if they didn't even make a mistake. That is a government that is not being held accountable. That is an intel agency that's not being held accountable, which, according to ChatGPT, is when a revolt is necessary. When it says there is widespread corruption, lack of accountability, and a failure of the judicial system to provide justice, leading to a loss of public trust in government institutions. I don't know about you, but I have absolutely no trust in our government institutions anymore. I don't trust any of them. I don't trust the FBI. I don't trust the CIA. Ladies and gentlemen, we had 51 former intel agents lie to the American people, saying that the Hunter Biden laptop was Russian disinformation. They did it on purpose. They knew it was a lie, and they did it anyways in order to get Joe Biden elected. How is anybody supposed to trust these intel agencies now when you have them picking candidates, presidential candidates, lying to the American people? Who was it, James Clapper, that lied to Congress under oath, lied to Congress, admitted to lying to Congress. Where's he at? That is called lack of accountability. That is called administering justice unequally. I can't go down the list of examples that we've seen in the last 5 years, 6 years, 8 years, using the FISA system, using the FISA courts to spy on a presidential campaign. And don't even get me started on Jack Smith and what they're doing to Donald Trump, using the justice system to try and lock up the people's candidate, a former president, trying to throw him in prison for 700 years. Not just a former president, but a current running presidential nominee for the Republican Party. Like, this stuff is insane. And I knew it's been insane. You know it's insane. We all know it's insane. Even Democrats do. I talk to a lot of Democrats, and they see exactly what we see, but they are willing to ignore it, and in some cases justify it, because it means getting rid of Donald Trump and winning an election. There was a poll that was put out 6-7 months ago. We talked about it on the show, where it said a very large swath of rich elite people in this country are perfectly happy with cheating in elections, just so long as their candidate wins. This is what happened. It was the scariest poll that Rasmussen ever seen. That was his quote, the scariest poll I've ever seen. When he's seen that the rich, powerful elites are willing to cheat in elections, are fine with cheating, essentially is what it said. We got a problem here, ladies and gentlemen. We got a big problem. And I don't know what the solution is. My hope is that Donald Trump gets elected. We cannot, this country cannot carry on for another 4 years like this. Joe Biden was supposed to be the unifying president. He was supposed to come in and unite the country, and he hasn't. And what's unfortunate is that Democrats are perfectly fine with it. They don't want unity. They don't. That was all BS. We have intel agencies lying to the American people to get their preferred candidate across the finish line. The lack of trust in our intel agencies and our justice system is so vast. I don't think either side trusts the justice system. I would know, because when I was a Democrat, we didn't trust the FBI. We didn't trust the CIA. What scares me the most is that Democrats have switched sides, and so they want to defund the local police based off some garbage notion that police are systemically racist, but they want to fund the federal police with badges and guns. That's what terrifies me. Our federal government is too big. It's out of control. And honestly, if you think the 2020 election was stolen, then, ladies and gentlemen, I have to admit that I think it's already too late. We're not in the process of preventing our country from being taken. I think we're now in the process of getting our country back, because it's already been taken. That is where I find myself thinking. I don't know which side we're on yet. I don't know if we've crossed over the Rubicon. Have we crossed over the precipice? Or are we almost there? Are we on the edge? Are we teetering? I don't know. That is the hard part I can't figure out. But according to ChatGPT, we meet like 3 of the 5 major criteria for when a revolt is necessary. And we all can feel it. I know you can. I certainly can. Something is going to happen. I don't know what, but something feels like it's coming to a head here. It is about ready to burst at the seams. And you see it inside Congress too. Inside the marble walls of Congress, you see these people about ready to fist fight each other on the floor. It's because we have this 4th branch of government. Our government is no longer a functioning system. It's not a constitutional republic anymore. It's neither. It is this weird Frankenstein, like hodgepodge, with this fourth branch of elite government that owns the media, that owns the military-industrial complex, that owns the politicians, and apparently, based off of what we've seen in 2020, it owns our elections. If these people have the power to sway elections, then, ladies and gentlemen, it's over. Because our freedom of speech, our vote, is the only thing that we have. It is the only legitimate, non-violent way of solving these problems. And if these people have taken that from us, which they are in the process of doing right now, by trying to imprison Joe Biden's political rival, then Houston, we have a problem. And I've been saying this for months. I just don't know what to do. The only thing I can do is just come on here and talk about it. I'm just telling you what ChatGPT said, and I've seen historical context. You have to remember this country's what, 254, 255? I don't know. It's over 250 years old. The framers of this country were going through the same exact thing when they were during the Revolutionary War. That's why they fought a war for this country. They were going through oppression. They were going through violations of rights. They were going through the lack of representation and accountability. And they seen that a revolt was necessary, which is why we had the Revolutionary War. This is the problem with them not properly investigating the 2020 election. This was the problem with them creating this fake January 6th Select Committee. This is the problem with them weaponizing the justice system. It's not what they're doing is the problem. It is the trust and credibility that is eroding into these institutions when they get caught. It's the perfect example is the vaccine mandates. They forced these vaccines onto people, and now you have the largest increase of vaccine hesitancy in this country's history. Because the people don't trust the health institutions, because of the lies, because of the gaslighting, because of all the misrepresentation, the misleading. I mean, and this is the same thing that Democrats, not Democrats, the Uniparty. This is the same thing. This fourth branch of government, this Uniparty, is destroying every single institution we have in our government, in our country. And I've been saying this for months. And they're leaving the American people with no options. The only option we have is our freedom of speech and our vote. And if they're trying to take one away, I'll be surprised if this episode's even allowed to air. So they're working on taking one away, and they may have already succeeded at taking the other away. We don't know yet. We're going to find out. This is why they should have investigated the 2020 election. It wasn't up to Donald Trump to prove fraud. It should have been up to the government to prove that there wasn't fraud. And they just didn't do it, folks. The American people were not satisfied. Whether they were satisfied or not because their candidate got across the finish line, you had millions upon millions of people that questioned that election. They should have went through every single ballot by hand to prove to the people that that election was safe and secure. And they didn't do it. I'm sorry, they just didn't do it. The J6 Select Committee was a joke. That entire committee's purpose was to create a J6 report so that they can use that report to try and remove Donald Trump off the ballot, to try and prevent Donald Trump from running for president again. They used it to impeach him. This is what they used it for. The J6 Select Committee was nothing more than a tool for Nancy Pelosi and all the other people that hated Donald Trump and seen him as a threat to their little club, to their system. I hate to, I don't like coming on here and giving all this negative stuff. I was just shocked with the results that ChatGPT gave me. I was so shocked that I had to share it with you guys. And so, but I'm going to be creating another episode after this. I wanted to get into this study this study that shows why it's so bad to teach victimhood to your population. It was actually a study that was done years ago, and the results are quite fascinating. I can't remember the doctors who put it together, but it was a psychological experiment, and the results are quite shocking, I do have to say. The results are pretty interesting. And so I wanted to go through that and why it's so dangerous to teach victimhood and why we have an entire generation that's being taught to be victims and why it's so dangerous for a population and a society. So that's what I wanted to go on the next episode, and so much stuff is happening right now, folks, but I'm trying to kind of go with the flow. I'm trying to take this one step at a time. I think there's really important narratives that we need to hit down on. The number one narrative that everybody that owns a microphone, that has a podcast or a YouTube channel, every single one of them needs to get on here and talk about this Donald Trump is a threat to democracy narrative. This is a key narrative that Democrats and people on the left and the government institutions are using in order to kneecap Donald Trump and win the 2024 election for Joe Biden. So I think it's important that we go back and we expose this narrative. We must debunk this narrative, or they're going to run away with it, because I could see it already getting out of control. Unfortunately, folks, not everybody is informed as you. Unfortunately, we have headline readers. We have the headline news junkies that get their news from reading the Google headlines. And when you have a search engine that can manipulate algorithms like Google, then we got an issue. And so this is the problem. You have millions of people that just are not aware with what is going on. And so when they pull out their phone and they Google Trump threat to democracy, they're going to get 55 headlines from all the leftist Pravda media right at the top 5 pages. And so this is why it's important for all conservatives, anybody that loves this country. And Democrats, some of them say they love this country, but I find it very hard to believe when they're perfectly fine with using the justice system to go after their political opponents. Maybe they do love this country. They just can't see the damage that's being caused to this country. I really don't think they think ahead. They never ask themselves the question, and then what? What happens if we indict Donald Trump 91 times and try and throw him in prison for 700 years? Their number one question right now is, can we? When they should be asking, should we? And they're just not doing that. And so granted, yeah, you may have Democrats that love this country, but they don't realize that what they're doing and what they're supporting and what they're cheering for, this hatred that they have towards one man, is actually destroying this country. It's dividing this country, which is exactly what they want. So I think it's important for content creators, anybody with a microphone or an iPhone, anybody with a TikTok channel, anybody that has a platform needs to be using their platform to inform their fellow Americans, to engage them and empower them with knowledge about history. The number one issue that we face in this country today is uninformed people, uninformed citizens. And that is the main reason why I started this show, was to inform my fellow Americans, because an informed society is the most powerful thing, and it is the only thing that can deter authoritarianism, is when the American people have oversight of a government to make sure that it's functioning properly. And I'm sorry, but I think vast majority of Americans, myself included, kind of just sat back and propped their feet up for far too long. And we allowed this Frankenstein monstrosity of a government to develop. And now we're going to have to get our country back from it. And they're not going to let go of it easy. They're not. They are not going to just pass. They're not going to toss us the keys and say, here you go. This thing is going to be brutal. And as long as we still have all of our fundamental rights, like voting and freedom of speech, as long as our representatives uphold the Constitution, and I'm talking about the Supreme Court, which is something else I wanted to get into on the next episode. As long as we have our representative government following the Constitution, then we're going to be okay. And we will be able to get this country back through the democratic process, through the legitimate means. But if they keep gnawing at these things, and they keep incrementalizing on our rights, our fundamental God-given rights, then this is when you're going to have a revolt. And I'm sorry, but these people, I don't think they realize it. Maybe they want a revolt. In some cases, I think they do. I think they want what they did on January 6th, like inciting that massive riot. You know, this is something else that I wanted to get into that is a massive problem for the left. They still to this day think that January 6th was an insurrection. They do not know, or they don't believe about all the undercover agents that were there that day. It is up to us, and it's going to be up to me, and I will put in all my effort to make sure that anybody listening to the show knows and understands exactly what happened on January 6th. I will come out with the evidence. I will come out with facts. I will come out with quotes from people like Stephen D'Antuono, who said that there were so many agents there that day that they lost count. These are the questions that everybody needs to be asking. And it is up to these people, the FBI and the CIA, to be giving us answers. But the problem is we only have half of the country asking these questions, and the other half don't even want to know. Don't even want to know the answer. That is our problem. So much to get into. I just wanted to get on here and vent my shock, my complete and utter shock at reading this ChatGPT conversation that I was having. And I got to say, folks, it is pretty scary stuff. So I know I usually try and lead out with some hope. I mean, I guess I can leave out with some hope. Donald Trump is crushing it in the polls. Joe Biden increased a little bit. His approval ratings went up a little bit. But I'm sorry, folks. I am a firm believer that the poll numbers are screwed. I do not trust polls whatsoever. But I can tell you this. I see it around the country. I see it all over the place. Granted, it's anecdotal and it's just me and my observations. But I see the support for Donald Trump way more this election than I did in 2020. And I think what it is the stark contrast between the two administrations. I think now people got a glimpse. People got a full recording of what a Donald Trump presidency would look like and what a Joe Biden presidency would look like. And they don't want anything to do with what we've been given the last 4 years. This is what I think we're starting to see across the country. I don't trust polls, but I think Donald Trump, I think he's going to do pretty good. He's going to do pretty good, which brings me to a Nebraska thing that I wanted to get into. So much to get into. There was a video that came out. Donald Trump made a surprise appearance. I don't know how real a surprise appearance is when you're talking about a former president that's protected by the CIA or protected by Secret Service. But he popped up into a Chick-fil-A, and everybody there loved him. They absolutely loved him. So this is something Donald Trump's really good at. He is certainly a man of the people, like the Cincinnatus of our day. He is one with the people. He has a very, very good connection with the grassroots, which is surprising for a billionaire to have that type of connection with the people. But he does, and it's quite impressive. And I think as long as he just keeps the rhetoric down, I know it's Donald Trump. Nobody's going to tell this guy what to say. And in some cases, he cannot stop from hurting himself when he talks about this stuff. I know a lot of us are like, man, can this guy just not say these things? No, he can. He can't. But the good thing is, folks, is we know he can. We know who he is. We know where he's coming from. And I have to say, as far as, people expecting Donald Trump to just lay down and roll over while he's getting persecuted and railroaded by judges and prosecutors across the country, if I was him, I'd be fighting back too. What do they expect the guy to do? We all know why they're prosecuting him. We all know why they're persecuting him. It's all in Democrat states. By Democrat judges, partisan Democrat DAs and attorney generals, partisan Democrat prosecutors in blue states, so in blue jurisdictions, and so we know what's going on. And so for Democrats to sit there and say, why doesn't Donald Trump just shut up? Why does he sit and talk about the judge? Why does he have to talk about the judge's daughter? These are the people that are targeting him, trying to throw him and his family in prison. So I don't blame the guy for speaking out against these people. I would be pissed. Folks, I couldn't tell you how pissed I would be if this was happening to me. And in all reality, I don't think I'd be able to handle it. A lesser man would fall and crumble to pieces if they had to deal with what Donald Trump's dealing with. An entire government is coming after you. An entire government is targeting you and trying to throw you in prison. Think about this, folks. It's not just Joe Biden targeting Donald Trump. It's Joe Biden using every single government institution, and these government institutions are perfectly justified with breaking a few eggs to make an omelet, which means they will, the ends justify the means. They will do whatever they got to do, whether that means lying to the American people about a laptop, whether that means fabricating documents to lie to a FISA court, to get a warrant, to spy on a presidential campaign. When you convince these government institutions that Donald Trump is the biggest threat in existence, these people are going to be willing to do anything. They know that they've broken the law and that the game is up. And when he gets in, there is going to be a complete overhaul of all of these institutions. And I'm sorry, folks, but this entire country, this entire government needs an enema. This town needs an enema. You guys remember that? That was off of, I think it was the first Batman, you remember? But anyways, all right, ladies and gentlemen, the hour is up. It was a pleasure doing the show. I wanted to leave off with a little bit of hope, and hopefully I did. Donald Trump's doing great, and I think this is going to be a very important election if we all do our part, and we can't just, voting is not good enough. We have to vote. We got to bring as many people with us as possible. Register your cousins, your nieces, your uncles, your aunts. Register them all. Make sure they're all registered to vote so that come election day, no, not even come election day. I think the battle for Republicans is going to be voting early. Screw voting on election day. We have to get out and vote early. As soon as you're able to go vote in the general election, go do it. Vote early. We can't do this, and I know Republicans want election day, and we will. If we win this election, the American people are going to have a chance to change election laws so that we can go back to election day instead of election month or two. Election quarter, that's what they're calling it. The only way we're going to go back to normalcy is by winning this election. So in your state, whoever's listening to this, in your state, when the polls open up for the general election, go vote. Do not wait for election day. This is where Republicans really screwed up last time, because we are starting way behind come time to count the ballots. So when it's time to count the ballots, Democrats are millions upon millions of votes ahead of us. That is like trying to score a point on the fourth down on your 5-yard line. You're just not going to be able to do it. It's a bad strategy. And so I am totally with the GOP on this and the RNC. Get out and vote as soon as possible. Don't wait for election day. That is the strategy we need to go for. What's happening in Nebraska is pretty important, and let's hope we get that. That is a winner-takes-all kind of strategy, and I'll explain that on the next episode because we're running out of time. So, all right, ladies and gentlemen, as always, thank you for tuning in. If you want to support the podcast, please download the podcast on all major podcast platforms. All you have to do is just type in my name. That is Steven with a V, Tauriello, Tauriello. You find the show. Trust me, there's not many Tauriellos out there, so it's not going to be. And I think I'm pretty sure I'm the only one with a podcast. So you type that name in your search engine or type it in Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your podcast on, and you'll find the show. Download it. That helps out the show. And if you can, leave a review, leave a comment. I'd much appreciate it. If you want to support the show, you can follow the show on Rumble, our last bastion for free speech. You can follow me there. And if you want to get a hold of me directly. You can get a hold of me at steventorielloshow@gmail.com. I am working on the website still. It's looking pretty good, folks, but it's going to be a little bit longer before we get it out there. But when it comes out, it's going to be worth it. Trust me. It's going to be awesome. But all right, ladies and gentlemen, thanks again for tuning in. I want you guys to have a good day. Have a great weekend, TGIF. Make sure you get some rest on Sunday. And I will talk to you guys here in a little bit. God bless you, and God bless America. You guys have a good one. Bye-bye.